Hey guys, welcome back to my review series for the comic book adaptation of The Lost World Jurassic Park. This is part 3 of 4, so if you haven't caught up on what's come before, you may want to go back and check out the first half of the story. Now we last left off with the InGen hunting party capturing many of the dinosaurs that they'd encountered on the game trail. Nick Van Owen and Sarah Harding have presently ventured into Ludlow's camp and set loose a couple of dinosaurs that have started to cause some major damage. Roland and Ajay have fear written on their faces. A fireball of metal flies towards them after having exploded back at the Hunter's base camp. They narrowly escape this modern comment of death. And back at the camp, Nick is busy running. If someone had forced him to admit it, he would confess that he didn't know that the base would turn into chaos so quickly. He cut the fuel lines of their vehicles, sure, but how was he supposed to know that letting loose a Stegosaur and Triceratops would result in this level of carnage? The mass of dinosaurs begins to separate him from Sarah Harding. She runs away, trying hard to avoid being trampled. Roland Timbo looks down at his second-in-command, very disappointed in his ability to handle this unraveling situation. It's the last time he'll leave Dieter Stark in charge. Amidst the shouts and curses of hunters, Nick stumbles across a baby T-Rex chained to a stake, almost like some pagan sacrifice waiting for the flames. He didn't plan on this getting so far out of hand, but Hammond hired him to free the dinosaurs, and that's exactly what he's going to do. Sarah finally makes her way back to the Mercedes-Benz that Nick had already found. She kept hearing Ian's words of Gambler's Ruin pounding away in her head. She walked up to the door and... a baby T-Rex? She can't believe Van Owen has grabbed a baby Rex and decided to take it with them. The environmentalist makes a point of concern, noting that the infant has broken its leg, and that they need to get out of the area before the hunters hear them. Sabotage and animal activism is why Nick Van Owen ended up on this island, and he isn't going to abandon those principles due to a little turbulence. After bringing the baby back to the trailers, Malcolm is understandably shocked. Sarah and Nick are attempting to set the baby's leg, but both Ian and his daughter Kelly want nothing to do with this situation. Fearing for her own safety, Kelly asks her father to take her somewhere that wouldn't be as dangerous. And both of them meet Eddie Carr, who's been busy setting up the high-hide on its elevated scaffolding. He asks what the issue is that's made them come all the way out here, but Ian says he'd be much better off not knowing. And then... this is bad. He tries to call Sarah with the satellite phone, but doesn't get an answer. He has to warn them. He tells Kelly to stay there and to not worry. He gives her his word that he'll be right back. But Kelly declares that her father never keeps his word. This upsets Malcolm, but he just has to go. He runs into the jungle and bursts into the mobile lab, telling the others to get the animal out of there immediately. But it's too late. Mommy's very angry. The Rexes have come searching for their infant. Malcolm and Sarah carry the baby out of the vehicle and leave it for its parents to escort home. Even though they've gotten the baby to safety, the three quickly begin to realize that the situation may be far from over. The Tyrannosaurs have left their infant in a nearby tree and begin to assault the RV in an attempt to push it over the cliff. Their worlds are turned upside down and Sarah grabs hold of whatever she can to prevent herself from tumbling towards a 100-foot drop. Suddenly, she loses her grip and falls onto the back glass of the trailer in a spider web of invisible suspension. Now, a Mercedes-Benz pulls up to the RV. It's Eddie. He came to save them, and just might be able to if he does everything right. He tosses them a rope after anchoring it to a nearby stump and connects the winch of his car to the back of the second trailer. But he's running out of time. The hero cheats death. The Rex misses him and is rammed with an airbag instead. The hero leaps to safety, still trying to save his team. And then the hero's world is a blur, filled with only a deafening roar. And any thoughts of heroes are silenced. The three gatherers hang onto the rope, terrified. They can feel the trailers moving over their heads and fall 100 feet below and into the sharp rocks of the cliff's edge. Heat rushes up at them. It's as if they're hanging on to the last bit of Mother Earth before they'd been sent to hell itself. A hand reaches out to pull Sarah Harding up, but it isn't Eddie's hand. It belongs to one of the hunters. They're safe. For now. Understandably, both teams are at odds with one another. This is one hell of a bad mess that they've put themselves in. Politics and virtues aside, they decide to move as a single unit and make their way to the communications center. Hammond ran everything off of geothermal power, which was never in need of any replenishing. They can radio for some choppers and leave the island if they make it there. The biggest problem that they'd have to worry about once they get there was the velociraptors. The hunters have determined that the raptors have put up nesting areas near to that compound. Dr. Harding also puts forth the point that the Rexes may continue to stalk them as well, But the InGen paleontologist Burke doesn't buy into this theory. Harding knows that the Rexes are going to want to defend the entire area though, and it's something that she wants to warn the others about. And so this unlikely pair of teams sets off for the worker village. They need to get off the island before their lives are filled with any more bouts of chaos. Van Owen and Roland have a brief conversation during this journey. Nick can't seem to understand why someone would venture all the way out to a foreign island just to kill an endangered animal that has been brought back into existence. Roland explains his reason with the story of a man that had climbed Mount Everest in the 70s, without any oxygen. He came down nearly dead. They asked the man why he'd gone up there to die, and the climber answered that he didn't. He went up there to live. And that about sums up why Roland has found himself here. The next day, a weary Sarah Harding stumbles across the jungle of this massive island. They'd been walking for hours without any breaks, and she needed one badly. She brushes against some bushes during her tired walk, and leaves behind the blood of the baby Rex on some nearby ferns. Roland gauges his followers in the endurance they currently share, and he decides that now is the best time for a rest. Soon after, Ludlow asks Roland to come take a look at the map of Sorna that he's been reading, and after setting down his double so that he too could get some much-needed rest, Van Owen takes advantage of the opportunity. Dieter grabs hold of a roll of toilet paper and goes off into the jungle to do his business, telling Carter, his driver, to wait for him, but Carter's too busy enjoying his Walkman to hear the fellow hunter. It isn't too long before Dieter is greeted with a little compy guest, one he enjoys electrocuting before making his way back to camp. Unfortunately, he stumbles and gets lost in this prehistoric world, his cries going unanswered by Carter, who's still presently listening to music. This ends up being a very bad development for Mr. Stark, and in death, Dieter learns one last lesson. Humans should fear cute compies. With the setting of the sun, the other hunters set up tents and decide to spend the night on this ridge before making the final trek to the center. Sarah makes her way towards Roland, who's just returned from searching for Dieter. He only found the parts they didn't like. And now, we get another moment with Ian and Kelly. Dr. Malcolm tells his daughter that he'd never let anything happen to her, and that she's the most important thing in his life. She asks if her father really means that, and is of course met with reassurance. Kelly then asks her dad to marry Sarah. Ian stops. That isn't what he'd had in mind, but Kelly goes on, saying that he knows that he wants to. Only one thing could have made him come all the way out here to a place that he hates more than anything else. This conversation is quickly interrupted after Dr. Harding asks if they have any more room in the tent for her to come in. Ian tells Kelly that he'll be back in a couple of minutes, after he makes one final look around the camp. Soon after, Sarah notices that Kelly is smiling at her. She asks the girl if she's okay, and gets the answer that Kelly has never been better. Then the ground vibrates. This causes Sarah to have an immediate reaction and search for anything around her that could have led to attracting a predator. She notices the blood on her shirt and realizes what a terrible oversight she'd made in not factoring in this seemingly small variable. She hides the shirt and grabs Kelly close, telling her to be quiet. Outside, Roland and Ian hear the noise that's approaching, and soon after, the giant head of a tyrannosaur pushes its way into Kelly's tent. It gets caught on the animal's face, and the Rex rips it up and throws it aside. Roland raises his gun and pulls the trigger only to hear a dead click. He cracks open his rifle and finds out that his gun is empty. Malcolm screams at Roland, wondering why he hadn't loaded it, but the big game hunter asserts that of course he did. Nick Van Owen is sick with the thought that his tampering with Roland's rifle could have caused Sarah and Kelly to be killed. He never intended that. He was starting to understand what Malcolm meant about everything going to hell in streaks. He impulsively ran to the sleeping bag that Kelly and Sarah were stuck in and shoved them in front of him in an effort to find nearby shelter. Meanwhile, Roland broke open a case, the words "Warning, veterinary use only" written in bold. He threw the rounds in the tranquilizer gun that lay next to him, praying that the darts worked fast. Meanwhile, the other Tyrannosaur had found the hunter's vet and threw his body into Carter, causing the man to fall to the ground. He'd soon meet a very messy fate. Nick knows that none of them can outrun the Tyrannosaur. He thinks fast and decides to make a risky move. There's a waterfall nearby, and if they're lucky, he picks up Kelly and Sarah and throws his body into the waterfall while the other hunters run past and into the depths of the jungle. All except for one. Burke sees the bodies disappear under the sheet of water and decides to make his way towards it and take refuge where it looked the safest. He didn't purposefully give away the hiding spot, but he did it nonetheless. This cave doesn't have much room, and Burke is terrified. He begins shoving the others, trying to make his way to the back of its wall, pushing Kelly towards the Rex's mouth. Sarah screams for him to stop moving. He's going to get her killed, but Burke keeps pushing until he's greeted with multiple feet of an equally disturbing creature. Creatures, actually. Burke is suddenly covered with millipedes that frighten him further. He instinctively pulls himself back from the wall and puts himself very close to the Tyrannosaur's tongue, and it takes advantage of the paleontologist's mammalian fear of such creepy crawlies. They can hear his scream long after it's ended, and the curtain of water begins to turn a bright pink with the shedding of human blood. At the edge of chaos, unexpected outcomes begin to occur. The risk to their survival becomes severe. Alright, that was the third issue of Topps adaptation of The Lost World Jurassic Park. I gotta say, this is a very cool adaptation that I really enjoy. They managed to cram a lot of the second act into this book, and kinda brushed over major events sort of quickly, but I guess they wanted to keep the Raptors and Santiago stuff together for the last. Included within this issue was the deleted scene that featured Kelly asking her father to marry Sarah. Now, I actually had a video plan that covered this exact topic, and even had it scripted out and ready for upload before I read this comic. If you guys still want to see how this scene was supposed to play out in the movie, let me know in the comments down below. It was of course filmed and unfortunately left on the cutting room floor. This adaptation of course sticks very heavily to David Koepp's script and features a lot of cool scenes that didn't make their way into the final film. I gotta say, I love the fact that it's so well made and put together. The only issue I really have with this particular book is the fact that they had to cut down Dieter's death scene dramatically in an effort to fit in the whole movie. The compy's revenge on Dieter happens to be one of my favorite parts of The Lost World, so yeah, it was kinda sad to see it get cut down so much in this issue. Now, before I go, I want to thank my game wardens and my InGen executives, including our newest board member, Timothy. I'd also like to thank all of my park workers and InGen hunters as well. It means the world that you all have given so much support to this channel, and I want you all to know how awesome it is to have you all here helping build it to become stronger every day. I sincerely appreciate what all of you guys do. I'd also like to thank everyone who's watched this video, and I hope that you all enjoyed today's content. If you feel like I deserve it, I would appreciate the like, and I hope that you'll consider subscribing if you want to hear from me again. I'll see you all in the next video, guys, and as always, take it easy.